I'm joined now by Boston Herald columnist Michael Graham, as well as Politico congressional reporter Rachael Bade. I'm so excited to talk to you guys in person. I don't ever get to do this. This is fantastic. And so much to talk about. Rachael, let me start with you, because we heard from Anthony Scaramucci essentially that the president still doesn't think Russia hacked this election. He says that Russia is so skilled at deception, if it was them, they wouldn't have been caught. How does this impact Congress's decision making here? When you look at this issue of Russia sanctions, you know, they're holding this vote on Tuesday. What do you think?
I think that Congress doesn't want to hear the president casting doubt on the intelligence community. I mean, from the beginning, since last fall, they have said explicitly that this was Russia interfering in the election. That's why you're seeing this bill go through Congress right now. I mean, obviously, the White House tried to slow this sanctions bill that basically spikes sanctions on Russia and makes it harder for the White House to release those sanctions. Basically, Congress can say, stop, you can't do that, and stop him from doing that. They've tried to water this down, and it passed by all but 2 votes in the Senate. It's going to sail through the House, we think, this week by as soon as Tuesday. So I think they're sending a message to the president, and that is Russia is an enemy, it's not a friend.
So, Michael, what happens if this thing gets to the president's desk? What kind of position does that put him in?
He's going to sign it. This is the bizarro track that we're on, where there's this political story and this political incompetence from Team Trump when it comes to the politics of the Russia issue, and then you've got the policies that the president has followed out. You know, he bombed Syria. He's not. If you took away the Trump element, just had like a term paper, how to be mean to Russia, this would be a lot of stuff on it.
So you think the policy, when you look at the actual policy,
my message to the White House is learn one word: niet. When someone asks you a question about Russia, say niet. Just don't talk about it. Just say the investigations are going on. We did nothing wrong. We still believe it's a witch hunt, but let them investigate, and then just move on from there.
So I'm curious, Rachael, what are you hearing privately from Republicans, right, about this possibility? Is there any kind of nervousness that, look, the president could decide, you know what, I am not going to sign this. I am going to go ahead and veto it just to send a message?
So Sarah Huckabee Sanders just a few hours ago said that the White House is receptive to this, which is interesting because they've been lobbying against it on the Hill for the past few weeks.
Right.
But I think that they are taking that lesson and they're learning from that right now, and they're going to run with that. They're going to say, oh, we were fine with this bill the whole time. We're going to sign it, because otherwise he vetoes it. Congress overrides his veto. They certainly have the votes to. And then again, it's another thing that the president is getting beat on in Washington, and it just makes the whole thing look awkward.
And interestingly, I do a lot of media in Europe, and there's a case we made that this is the wrong approach for sanctions from America, from the European standpoint of trying to get more, carrot versus stick. But this White House can't make that case, assuming they were able competently to make the case, because no one can hear it, because they've so politicized or allowed to become politicized the Russia issue.
All right. Well, let me ask you, Michael, about this issue of, quote, complete power to issue presidential pardon. President Trump asserted that. We saw that with a tweet when it comes to the Russia investigation. That after his lawyer denied an earlier Washington Post report that he's considering using that power. So, Michael, is there a disconnect here? The message that we're hearing from the president and the message we're hearing from his advisors?
Well, Mr. President, about that absolute power, I have this ticket in Framingham, Massachusetts, that if you wanted to take a look at, I would be very personally grateful. Might be a nice test run for you. Anyone in the position that Donald Trump is in who uses the word pardon in a tweet is just being, once again, politically dumb. We are nowhere near a place where this should be an issue. I would argue that the people who are making the case against Trump have yet to lay out what crime he could theoretically have committed. Collusion isn't a crime. It might have been politically bad, might be even evil, but it's not necessarily a criminal act. Even talking about pardons just shows that the ineptitude is all in how they're handling this from a political standpoint.
And if you're his legal team, what are you thinking, Michael, when you see a tweet like that?
Where's the nice window that's near me? I mean,
it's not helpful for him.
He's the world's worst client ever. And as Anthony Scaramucci is going to find out, he's the world's worst person to do PR for, because he handles it all himself. You can't count on anything that he said an hour ago to be operative today or an hour later, and you can't stop him. And so what can you do?
Rachael, let me ask you, President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, are both testifying this week. What can we expect from this, you think, Rachael?
I think that things will come out, they will leak. I mean, obviously, Congress wanted this to be in an open setting so that people could watch and sort of get some answers to questions they have personally. However, these will be close settings. I would expect, since both Democrats and Republicans are going to be in there, a bunch of staffers, things will leak out. Kushner has said, this is the one time I'm coming to the Hill. I'm going to do this. I'm going to exit. I'm not coming back. However, this is only a 2-hour time frame. And from all the congressional investigations I've covered in the past little bit in terms of the Clinton email issue, the Benghazi issue, typically Typically, they're in there for a full 8 hours, and then they come back again sometimes. So this is not going to end with these testimonies. It's just sort of the beginning. And overall, it's going to be a huge distraction from healthcare. This week, they have this vital vote in the Senate. Do they want to proceed to this bill? That's where the White House should be focusing right now. But of course, their attention is totally haywire right now in terms of looking at Russia.
Should we expect clarity, Michael, after these testimonies?
No. The topic is too messy, and now that you have the email from this attorney or from the person who set up the meeting saying we've got stuff from the Russian government, and oh boy, I can't wait to see it. I mean, that really was the turning point for this. I know a lot of Trump supporters, obviously in conservative media, you hear from them, and this story still isn't on their radar screen, but you could feel a shift in their attitude from this is just crazy to, oh, maybe somebody did something dumb.
Because of the emails.
Exactly. Well, because of specifically an email where you have this president's son saying, I want to see what the Russians have. Once again, no one can show how that's illegal, but it's still politically dumb, and if something were to follow up after that, you can see how it could finally have a life of its own. But President Trump's ratings with Republicans remain strong. This story isn't moving them, but for the first time, it maybe has the potential to.
Michael, I want to ask you about communication strategy. So his new communications chief, Anthony Scaramucci, has been deleting his old tweets. Among those tweets are tweets that show he supported Hillary Clinton and tougher gun laws and opposed President Trump's border wall. Do you think that in any way, shape, or form undermines him in this White House?
Well, he's working for a Republican who gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to Hillary Clinton, considered running on 2 other tickets platforms before he became Republican, was a lifelong Democrat, and was lifelong pro-choice until he decided to run for president this time. So
no.
Somehow I'm not thinking that's a problem. I mean, Donald Trump is supra-partisan. I mean, he's partisan. He's the Trump party.
Supra-partisan.
Yeah. Is that the right word? Did I do that right? I have an English lit degree. I should know this.
Yes.
Exactly. Partisanship just doesn't matter to him. He absolutely would sit down with a room full of Democrats if they would work with him and make a deal. He doesn't think in those terms. Anthony Scaramucci has an audience of one, and that one is Donald Trump. And when Trump sees a representation he likes, Anthony keeps his job.
And we were just talking, actually, before the segment, we were discussing these tweets that he's deleting, and actually thinking, in a way, it almost makes him look a little stronger. He's getting out front of this story. At some point, people were going to look at his Twitter. They were going to go through, and there was going to be an embarrassing story.
So he can say, oh, that's old news.
Yeah,
I took
it's
care
old
of that.
news.
I explained that already. Let's move on.
Exactly. So it's sort of like, it's getting out front of it. He's the one bringing it up and saying, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be deleting these tweets that totally contradict what the Republican Party stands for, and me criticizing Trump and praising Hillary Clinton. So he's trying to get ahead of it in that regard.
And there's an element of Trump supporters that I think people, not to say East Coast elites, but but you know the people I mean.
For the record, I'm from the Midwest, okay?
But you know what I mean. The people who really have problems with Trump and don't understand why Trump supporters still stick with him. If you talk to a Trump supporter, like the first sentence out of their mouth is, I hate Trump, something. Everybody has something about Trump they don't like.
Yeah.
But then they come back to, but he's doing this, or I don't like his enemies more, it's something else. There is no, as much as he craves personal loyalty, at no point have I seen indication that he doesn't like being, or that criticism bothers him per se. He's very thin-skinned while at the same time demanding utter sycophancy. It's an interesting, interesting dynamic.
So I have sort of a 30,000-foot question to end with here for both of you. And Michael, you talk about the Russia investigation not really being on the radar of conservatives and people who support President Trump, although they're beginning to perhaps pay a little bit more attention. But what about when it comes to health care and the domestic agenda? Are people starting to pay attention to the fact that the promises that were made aren't necessarily being kept within the time frame that was originally promised to them?
I think that if the Senate really believes that they can walk away from health care and do nothing, and then see Republicans maintain some kind of powers, particularly in the House in 2018, they're just crazy. I mean, this is what normal people get. My health care's messed up, or maybe mine's not, but my neighbor's is. Premiums going way up, deductibles are huge. You said you're going to fix it. They don't care what the fix looks like, the repeal and replace fight. They just want something that looks like it's going to be better. And if the Senate completely fails in this, that's failure.
And Rachel, what do you think? I mean, the political pressure is really on. We've been saying that, but it is now absolutely down to the wire.
I can tell you, I had a very senior Republican say to me just a couple of weeks ago, if we don't repeal Obamacare, if we don't get this health care bill passed, we're done. Like, we can't do anything. Like, they understand that health care was something that unified Republicans for 7 years. If they can't do this, they think tax reform is going to be easier? Absolutely not. You're going to have K Street getting involved, all these different business groups that have a lot of money, a lot of power saying, do not get rid of my tax break. If they don't get health care done, they're not going to get tax reform done. No tax reform, where's infrastructure? I mean, at some point, yes, I don't think there are a lot of Republicans that care about the Russia scandal, and they say, oh, the media, they're running off with this. We don't really care. Tell us about how does this affect my own bottom line? But if it's distracting from the agenda and it's keeping them from getting something done, then eventually they're going to start getting ticked at this, because if they don't get health care done, they're in big trouble.
All right, we'll see what happens this week. Rachael Bade and Michael Graham, again, so good to see you guys
great.
talking in person like this. I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.